The amount of negligence, the amount of mistakes that was made here, I have a very difficult time not leaning myself towards this was intentional as opposed to fecklessness.
But wait, talk to me about that. I actually heard you say this right the day after, which I wanted to ask you about. What do you mean intentional?
We still have questions, tons of questions. I mean, serious questions about the assassination attempt on President Donald Trump this last Saturday. And it's amazing how little we're hearing from the FBI or the Secret Service. The fact that they rarely do any sort of press conferences or press releases of any information that they've gathered. Whatever we're learning from leaks or we're learning from local news reporters in the Pittsburgh area. But we still don't have information about what kind of gun was used. We don't have a picture of the gun. We don't have definitive numbers on the number of rounds that the attempted assassin fired versus how many rounds were fired by the snipers. The question after question after question still lingering and still hanging there. But thankfully, there are a lot of experts who are stepping forward and saying, listen, I look at the lay of the land. I look at what was done here, and I've got a ton of questions that the Secret Service needs to come clean about sooner rather than later. And one of those men is Congressman Cory Mills of Florida. Now, Congressman Mills appeared on CNN yesterday, and we're going to sit back and watch a ton of this exchange because what he said during this interview is absolutely mind-blowing. And the kind of thing that, after the JFK assassination, it took like a decade for people to start asking questions about what happened that day and about the investigation and what was wrong with the investigation after the fact, right? Cory Mills is watching this transpire right before our eyes right now, and he is already going there. Take a look.
I look at all of these things and I look at different videos where an assailant will pull a firearm on a law enforcement officer, and the first thing they do is they immediately pull and draw and mitigate the threat and the risk. I ask why the local law enforcement officer did not do so. The other thing is that when you set up an advanced team, I keep hearing this about the perimeter elements.
Yeah.
The perimeter is actually established by your threats that are in the area. So if I don't have any threats outside of 100 yards, okay, fine, I can cordon off a certain area. But if I have a building 160 yards, perfectly adjacent to the stage, that's an obvious threat, especially with an elevated position that has overwatch.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sniper's paradise. And, we talk about eagle's nest. You also have, which no one talks about, but the water tower.
So what I'm hearing from you is it's not a failure on the ground for sure, but 100%. Also a failure in advance?
I think it's a failure in advance. I think it's a failure to have the counter snipers to be able to establish their range fin and their sketch maps.
I also heard we've also learned that local snipers were stationed inside that building.
I haven't heard that piece of it yet, but that doesn't necessarily make sense unless they were actually in a window which was backed off, because a lot of times you will get yourself in there. Sometimes you expose your rifle in a way to try and do a force protection or a show of force that actually stops things. Others are actually more tactical where they'll sit back a little bit, but a sniper for the law enforcement is only trained to shoot about 75 yards, unlike your counter sniper teams that are on set. But here's my problem. In having done this for so long, they always say the adage of ignorance is bliss, and I think that's true. I've done thousands of advances. I've done thousands of counter sniper operations with our teams in Iraq and Afghanistan, etc. The amount of negligence, the amount of mistakes that was made here, I have a very difficult time not leaning myself towards this was intentional as opposed to fecklessness.
But wait, talk to me about that. I actually heard you say this right the day after, which I wanted to ask you about. What do you mean intentional?
All right. Now, this is where things get very interesting. And this was a fascinating sort of ramp up and build up to that question from the CNN host saying, what do you mean intentional? And as we let Congressman Mills sort of lay this out and describe all of the things that look intentional with regard, very deliberate, let's say, with regard to what was done, what wasn't done, in terms of the layout and in terms of the precautions the day of this assassination attempt, it's important for everyone to realize, and of course the CNN audience did not get the benefit of this, of course, because CNN sucks. Cory Mills is a retired member of the famed 82nd Airborne Division in the United States Army, and Cory Mills is a sniper. He is an Army sniper. So he understands better than anyone collecting a paycheck at CNN the lay of the land here and exactly what happened and what didn't happen to prevent it from happening. All right. So as he lays this out, and sadly, I think Cory Mills assumes that the person he's talking to and the producers at CNN and even the CNN audience has an understanding of who he is and what he knows and some basics about this. So as he goes through this, bear all of that in mind, please, as you see these two brilliant intellects butting heads a little bit, because she immediately becomes very uncomfortable with where Cory Mills goes. And I have a feeling it's not just her, but she's getting screamed at in her ear by the producers back in the control room, saying, "You can't let him say that. You can't let him say that. Jump in there. You can't let," because watch what happens.
You know,
I mean, an intentional failure on the part of...
No, I wouldn't say an intentional failure on the part of, but I got to just, I sit here and I scratch my head. You don't want to be the conspiracist. You don't want to be the person.
I'm telling you, because that's what it's leaning toward.
No, I know. And that's the issue, is that you walk this fine balance of, you're not trying to be a conspiracist, but you look at it and you go, how could this have gone so...
But it's one thing if someone on the street says it. It's not. I mean, you, Cory Mills, member of Congress, former sniper, you saying it. I mean, it makes my eyebrows go up. What? When you say you're walking the line on this, intentional what? It almost seems to me, and I think that an investigation is necessary at this point within Congress, not just the FBI, not just others. I look back at it and I'm thinking, all right, for an individual, if you looked at the escalations and how they are trying to approach him, let's just say that it was like, okay, first we want to censor and silence you, then we want to indict and imprison you. Now we're attempting to kill you and take you off the stage. You, let's slow down.
Please.
I'm hearing two things from you. I don't want to jump ahead of things, but I'm also hearing you jumping ahead of things.
Well, actually, I'm just looking at all the different possible capabilities. One of the things as a military member, one of the things as a person who's running the special operations communities before, one of the people who's actually done this is that you look at all potential analysis, right?
Donald Trump and his team have said,
no, I agree.
Dial it back. Do not blame this on Joe Biden.
Oh, well, actually, I didn't say Joe Biden, to be completely
Who's the
clear.
they then? Let's be very specific.
Well, that's what the investigation has to do. Was it local law enforcement that had made the mistakes, or was there something to it? Was there other types of things that we need to be analyzing or looking at and providing analysis? My point is that when something's so significant, you're talking about something that hasn't happened in decades, right?
I totally.
But my point is this: from a perspective of someone who's actually conducted these are not difficult advances. This is not like I'm putting together a stage placement in a tight shot. This is about looking at your surroundings. What is my green, yellow, and red route, which is your routes out in case? What is my actual elements that I need to be looking at as far as mitigating threats or risks or increased levels? Where's my range fan for the sniper that says, okay, here's my 100, my 200, my sketch. Here's an area where someone could shoot. Because here's my thing.
So you're
Let's
saying,
just say it's a voice element.
You're saying...
Can I just jump in here? What's the point of having Cory Mills on there and asking him questions about this if you don't just let him talk? And she's constantly interrupting him, because I assure you, again, there are people yelling in her ear, "Oh, we can't let him say these things. You've got to jump in there. You've got to challenge him." It's like you asked Cory Mills on, an ex-sniper, a man who knows what he's talking about, and you are so hell-bent on maintaining this veneer, this facade that everything's fine. Oh, sure, mistakes were made, but it was just incompetence. And I guess we've reached the point now, and we've got more on the Secret Service. And when I say more on Secret Service, I'm, of course, referring to the director of the Secret Service, because she does appear to be a moron. We're going to play that for you in a moment. But we've reached the point now, it seems, in reflection and analysis of the events of July 13th and the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, that we, the American people, have a choice right now. We have to choose that there was negligence at play here, or it was nefarious. Negligent or nefarious. There are no other choices. This was incompetence, or there's something very dark at play. And Cory Mills, as a person who is involved in the investigation, is keeping his mind open to either. The journalists in CNN, they refuse to keep their minds open to either. And one must ask why. All right, we'll go back to this.
this is so basic that how big the screw up was, that's what's leading your brain down this
That's
road.
exactly right. In a way,
look,
but because here's the other thing. Let's
Tom
just say
Emmer
it's a
was just on.
resource.
Tom Emmer was just on with me, and he said very specifically to me, I wrote it down.
Mhm.
He said very clearly, it is too early to be talking about who is at fault and who is responsible.
That's why an investigation is necessary.
Is it not dangerous? Is it not reckless to even be throwing around the word intentional?
So to question things as we do an investigation is recklessness, because at that point, then should we never question anything? My point is this.
I'm not trying to be PC. My point is, in the political environment that we are in,
what would it have taken? Right? Let's just say that resources was limited. Let's go with that as a reasoning. So how many times have you seen where they just put a police car inside of a parking lot with not an officer in it and just leave the lights on as a deterrent? Why couldn't that have been a simple thing that was placed in? Why couldn't we have said to the owner of the actual AGR company, hey, look, we don't want to disrupt your business, but we also want to make sure your parking lot is clear of people trying to park in there for the rally. Why don't we place an officer there? My point is that this was too easy of a solution. And when I think about 160
I'm just so uncomfortable with even having
I'm uncomfortable with having to say it. Trust me, my whole point is that I would like to look at this and say, where was the mistake made? How can we correct it in the future? Why was this actually done? But I think that this does warrant a J13 type of commission where we can actually look at it and say, let's investigate and find out why this happened so it doesn't happen to anyone. This is not about a political thing. This is about, we had an attempt to assassinate a president.
Mm-hmm.
We really need to understand what a serious matter this is. And this was a milliseconds or millimeter difference between this being an attempt and this being an assassination. And I can tell you, at 160 yards, Kate, just to give you an idea, your off-the-shelf rifle shoots what they call 1 minute of angle at every 100-yard line. So at 100, it's 1 inch, 200, 2 inches, etc. So now you're talking about 1.6-inch grouping capability of a rifle off a manufacturing line. Your average human being, because we used to do this in understanding sniper training, you're 20 inches shoulder to shoulder, 40 inches head to waist, and you're 6'8" in your average head size. These are kind of the dimensions that you look at as an average. You're talking about a 1.6-inch grouping for multiple shots on a basic rifle. We're blessed, and I do believe in divine intervention, so I am a person of faith. I can't explain, one, I hope that it was a corrugated roof and maybe he slipped off on one of the edges of the corrugated roof or he was rushed. But the whole thing, I think, just needs to have a better explanation so that the American people and everyone can feel comfortable.
And I think that's why people are saying pump the brakes, because we've seen conspiracy theories, honestly, on the right and the left. I just said Donio Sullivan on that it's already going like wildfire. This is the kind of political environment that they're saying it's too hot and people are jumping to too many conclusions.
Well,
that's why I am so uncomfortable.
As a military, remember, one of the things that we do is we what if scenario everything in the world, right? That's how
I know, but I don't know. I'm just saying, if it's the what ifs that you talk about maybe in an investigation, and the what if that you are presenting on live television, I don't know. It's just,
well, so listen, I'm a public official.
Yes.
Anything that I do, anything that I say in the public. I don't try and hide it in private. I think that the American people need transparency, accountability, and accessibility to the elected officials, not to try and hide behind what we want to look at. And I also think that if the American people know that we're questioning these things as well, it puts them at rest to at least know, why aren't they at least looking into this? Why we should look at every single situation which is of this significance. We should look at it from multiple angles to ensure that nothing is left out, nothing could be potentially claimed as being covered up. Yeah. We need to have more transparency to the American people, and I think that's what everyone deserves.
But a full investigation.
Full investigation.
Before anyone
that's right.
points at fault.
That's exactly right. And that's why I say I have not made an accusation of something. I just want to make sure we're covering our bases to ensure that we get a proper investigation at all levels to ensure this doesn't happen again and that our president can be safe.
Congressman, thank you for coming in. Thank you very much.
Yeah, she's real happy that the congressman came in there, isn't she? Couldn't you tell? It's amazing to me still, after all of this time, how clueless professional journalists happen to be. If you think about what she was saying and what she was conveying there in that interview, is that she feels that it's her job and her network's job and her profession's job to protect the American people from hearing such discussions. She would prefer that such discussions happen behind closed doors so that we, the American people, never get wind of it and never know. Because that's supposed to keep us from jumping to conspiracy theory conclusions. Think about that logic for a moment. No, we can't have transparency. We can't be discussing these things out in the open. The American people, they've got to be protected from such things because we can't trust them to hear that. So do it all behind closed doors, reach your conclusions there, and then come out and present it to us. Then everyone will be, secure in the knowledge that they've got the truth delivered to them. Which, by the way, is exactly how conspiracy theories start. And they're still clueless of that. I mean, I ask you, after seeing that exchange, do you feel better or worse knowing that a sitting congressman is asking these questions? That a sitting congressman is leaving all options open and wants a full, transparent, and open investigation into any possible scenario that may have led to the events of July 13th. Does that make you feel better? Or the woman who says, hey, let's not say any of those things. That makes me uncomfortable. We've got a heated political climate right now. If you say things like that, those wahoos out there, they're going to go nuts. So let's protect them. Let's protect all of us from those crazy people, which is, by the way, exactly what makes people crazy. The news media, their profession, has now turned into this sort of pretend superior intellectual gatekeeper whose main function is to not find out information and then deliver it to you. Their main job is to keep you from getting information. Certain information, the information they decide you can't handle and shouldn't hear. That's what you just saw displayed right before you. And anyone who looks at the events of July 13th and then has an expert sniper on to talk about it and decides that it's best to not have this conversation while you're actually having that conversation. I don't know what business they're in, but they're not in the business of news, information, and journalism. That's what you just saw. Meanwhile, very real questions continue to be asked to the director of the Secret Service, the person who was handpicked by the Biden administration to run this very important organization. And one part of her interview with ABC News from yesterday has gotten a lot of attention and raised a lot of eyebrows. Maybe you've already seen it. Let's play it.
Should that roof have been secure, period?
That building in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, there's a safety factor that would be considered there, that we wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof. And so, the decision was made to secure the building from inside.
A sloped roof. We can't have somebody on a sloped roof because of safety concerns. It's an OSHA thing. You know what I mean? Sure. And I guess based on what I saw from some of the Secret Service agent, some of them were wearing pumps, and so they might slide. ABC News was helpful enough to actually show us what roof she was talking about. That's the slope. I've seen a more severe slope on a wheelchair ramp heading into a building to accommodate the disabled. Look at the slope she's talking about. That we'd be very, very concerned about the safety of having somebody on that sloped roof. Meanwhile, the actual roof where the actual Secret Service snipers were, right behind President Trump during that speech, has a more severe incline, a sharper slope than that sloped roof. She's just lying. She's grasping at straws. She's just you. Is what she's doing, because she's just trying to cover her ass, or she's trying to toe the line because she's been told to toe the line. But a sloped roof, that's what we're going with now. That's what we're going with, guys. A sloped roof. There's more.
Was every element, every part of his, from the intelligence to the counter assault team, to the detail agents, to the shift agents, every element, top to bottom, of the advance in the operation, was every element increased after you learned of this credible threat? What we increased.
Real fast, the credible threat they're talking about is that it was revealed yesterday that the FBI and other intelligence agencies learned of an assassination threat from the government of Iran trying to assassinate Donald Trump, which, by the way, just political observation, if Iran is so freaked out that Donald Trump might become president, I think that says a lot about who Donald Trump is and who Joe Biden is. You know, they tell us that Donald Trump doing away with the Iran nuclear deal ended up actually helping Iran and putting them on a further path to get a nuclear weapon. Remember that message that the Obama Biden people told you? Oh, we got to have the Iran nuclear deal, the joint agreement on nuclear weapons, because that will keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And if Donald Trump gets rid of it, well, that's going to give Iran carte blanche to get a nuclear weapon. That's what they told you. And if that's the case, why is Iran trying to kill Donald Trump and keep him from being president? Okay, that said, here's the Secret Service director's response to a question: what did you do with the information that Iran had a plan, a plot to assassinate Donald Trump?
This credible threat.
What we increased was what we felt was appropriate for the former president and for that particular event on that day. We have been increasing the assets and the resources and the staffing that we have been providing to the former president since he was a presidential candidate and then the presumptive nominee. That's what I can tell you.
That sounds like a no.
I am not saying a no at all. I'm saying that we have continued to increase the resources that we've been providing.
She's just a disaster, absolutely hapless. A little bit more. And again, no press conference from the Secret Service. No updates at all from them about the investigation and what they know and what they don't know. They're just tropping this woman out. And look at her face. She's like, how dare you even challenge me and ask me these questions? Don't you know who I am? I used to provide security for PepsiCo, okay? I used to protect sugary beverages as they were being transported around the world. Don't you know who I am? How dare you challenge me and my credentials? And then more information that was revealed yesterday afternoon, early evening, about more real problems at the Secret Service and very real threats against Donald Trump.
Aaron, there's been some developments as the investigation has progressed. You know, what the investigators are telling us is, as far as a motive, a manifesto, the reasoning behind this, the suspect is still a blank slate. But what they have developed is a lot of the background about what happened that day. They know that he went to his employer at the nursing home where he works as a dietary specialist before this and said, I need Saturday off. I have something important to do. But he told his coworkers, I'll see you on Sunday. So he changed his days off, presumably for this. We also understand that when he got to the fairgrounds where this rally was being held for Donald Trump, the first thing that puts him on the radar of security people is near the magnetometer area where they're screening people in. He's carrying in his hand a rangefinder. It's a device that looks like a small pair of binoculars, but it's used by shooters to measure the distance when they're setting up a long distance shot. Because he didn't have a weapon, that would not have prevented him to go through security. But they did flag, what does he have this in his hand for? At that point, they told people, keep an eye on this guy. But then he leaves the secure area, the staging area, and he doesn't turn up again for some time until the crowd says there's a guy crawling up the roof and it appears he has a rifle. There is an eerie moment in here, Aaron, where he's taking the rangefinder and he's looking through it at the counter sniper positions. And one of the counter sniper positions is looking at him through the scope. At this point, there's not a gun in the picture, as I understand it, but they're saying he's looking at us, looking at him. Then when people alert the police and they try to come up the ladder to get him, and he confronts them with the AR-15 gun, they dive for cover. And then a moment later, he opens fire. But a lot of this sounds very spread out. The end of it happens very quickly. The last piece is the search of the car. As we reported last night, 2 remote-controlled IEDs, remote-controlled bombs in the car. The remote control for those devices found on his person on the roof, according to sources. 3 fully loaded magazines with nearly 100 rounds, a bulletproof vest. So it raises the question, did he expect to escape from this? And if so, what was all that intended for? What was to happen next? Questions that are still open in the minds of these investigators.
Thank you to Media Research Center for the clip. And yeah, these are all questions. By the way, all of this gleaned from inside sources that are leaking and talking to the media, nothing officially from any official person. We haven't seen a picture of the gun. We haven't heard any more details officially from anybody, which again, you know, not to contradict or pick a fight with a journalist, a professional news anchor on CNN, but when the government continues to be tight-lipped and not deliver regular updates and information, and it's only trickled out through leaks anonymously to the media and to reporters, and that's how we learn information, well, that actually makes us even more suspicious. And this is how conspiracy theories happen. Not by having a congressman who's a trained ex-sniper from the 82nd Airborne Division of the United States Army sitting and saying, yeah, I think this needs to be looked at, and I think that needs to be looked at, and we need to leave every option open. That's what makes us think that this is going to be handled properly, not what we're getting right now. And then there's this, and this is literally just in from about 20 minutes ago, Fox News reporting. Here, take a look.
We have just learned that the Trump rally shooter, Thomas Crook's parents, were looking for him in the hours leading up to the shooting. We're now told they eventually called law enforcement to report that Crooks was missing, and they were worried. And they also were told, those parents are now being cooperative now with authorities, but they gave them the heads up that something's going on with our son. We are worried. We don't know the texture or the details of their concerns. So in other words, well, were they worried that he had a gun? Were they worried? You know, what were they worried about? Were they worried that he was going to try to attempt to kill a sitting president and then go ahead and turn into an assassin and kill another person and injure 2 others? It was an attempted assassination on Trump, but he managed to murder anyway. Are we talking about that? What were they giving the cops a heads up about? This is the first time we are hearing this. We'll stay on the story and we will bring you the details, updates as we get them. Crook's parents were looking for him hours ahead of the assassination attempt.
Yeah, we're learning more and more and more and more, and it keeps trickling out. And it's good to bear in mind right now and keep reminding everybody that the people who were charged with protecting former President Trump, the Republican nominee for president, the stories that keep coming out and the claims of budget shortfalls and stretched resources, none of it makes any sense. I mean, honestly. This federal government spends more money than we've ever spent in our lifetimes, in our history. And you're going to tell me that it finally comes time to tighten the budget and make some decisions about money that won't be spent, and the decision is made on the security detail for Donald Trump. The decision, by the way, made from the very government that continues to say that he must be stopped at all costs from becoming president. If this is the case, I would love to learn, full transparency, if they are making budgetary decisions because of strained resources in the Secret Service Department, that how that has manifest in President Biden's protection and his detail. My understanding is that the Secret Service was deployed to protect President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine while he was at a conference in Utah on the same day as this assassination attempt. If we have resources for that, surely we can have resources to protect Donald Trump. But you know what they say about government spending? How you budget and how you prioritize that spending, that is your policy. It tells you what's most important to you. And I'm afraid we're learning exactly what is and isn't important to the Democrats who are running this White House.